At 2:17 p.m., March 24th, 1945. 24-year-old First Lieutenant James Sullivan sits in the cramped cockpit of his P-51D Mustang, call sign Irish Dancer, 26,000 feet above the Ruhr Valley in western Germany. He's completed 47 combat missions as an escort pilot with the 357th Fighter Group, 8th Air Force. Below him, a formation of 32 B-17 Flying Fortresses lumber toward the Dortmund railway yards, and Sullivan's job is simple: keep German fighters away from those bombers. The mortality rate for fighter pilots in his squadron stands at 38%. 18 of the original 42 pilots who deployed with him to England 14 months ago are dead. The March sky is crystalline blue, temperature negative 42 degrees Fahrenheit at altitude. Sullivan's oxygen mask fogs with each breath. His fighter carries 6 50 caliber machine guns, 1,080 rounds of ammunition, and 269 gallons of fuel, enough for maybe 90 more minutes of flight time at combat speed. The mission briefing predicted light enemy fighter presence. Intelligence was wrong. Sullivan spots them first. 8 Focke-Wulf 190s, diving from 29,000 feet, angling toward the bomber stream from the northeast. He keys his radio. Checkmate leader, this is Checkmate 3. Bandits, 2 o'clock high, 8 contacts, FW-190s. His wingman, 2nd Lieutenant Robert Garrison, acknowledges. The 2 Mustangs break formation, climbing to intercept. Sullivan's engine, a Packard-built Rolls-Royce Merlin V1657, producing 1,695 horsepower, screams as he pushes the throttle forward. Airspeed climbs through 380 miles per hour. The altimeter needle sweeps upward, 27,000, 28,000, 28,500 feet. The German fighters don't see them coming. Sullivan closes to 400 yards, then 300. His gun sight, a K-14 gyroscopic computing sight, tracks the trailing FW-190. At 250 yards, he squeezes the trigger. The Mustang shudders as all 6 machine guns erupt. Tracer rounds, 1 in every 5 bullets, arc toward the enemy fighter in bright orange streams. Strikes flash across the FW-190's right wing. Pieces of aluminum skin peel away. The German fighter rolls hard left, trailing smoke. Sullivan doesn't follow. He's already pivoting toward a second target. But then the entire world explodes. A 20mm cannon shell from an unseen German fighter. Another FW-190 that dove from directly above, punches through Irish Dancer's left wing route. The explosion is catastrophic. The shell detonates inside the wing, shredding hydraulic lines, fuel lines, and the main spar. A gout of flame erupts from the wing's leading edge. Sullivan's aircraft snaps violently left. The control stick goes mushy in his hands. More shells hammer his fighter. One tears through the engine, cowling with a metallic shriek. Another explodes against the cockpit canopy frame, spider-webbing the plexiglass with cracks. Shrapnel peppers Sullivan's left arm and shoulder. He feels impacts like hammer blows, then spreading warmth as blood soaks through his leather flight jacket. The Mustang is dying. Oil pressure drops from 65 pounds per square inch to 20 in 3 seconds. Coolant temperature spikes from 100 degrees Celsius to 135. The engine coughs, belches black smoke, and keeps running on momentum and fury. Sullivan's altimeter unwinds, 28,200, 27,800, 27,400 feet. He's losing altitude at 400 feet per minute. The German fighter that hit him, a mottled gray FW-190 with yellow nose markings, flashes past Sullivan's canopy, already setting up for another attack run. Sullivan glances at his instruments. Fuel pressure fluctuating. Hydraulic pressure 0. Electrical system compromised. His radio is dead, filled with static, and the crackle of electrical fire somewhere behind the instrument panel. He is 28 miles inside enemy territory, flying a fighter that's hemorrhaging fuel and oil, with an engine that could seize at any moment. 3 more German fighters are vectoring towards him from the west. The nearest Allied airfield, a forward operating strip near Liège, Belgium, is 140 miles northwest. At his current rate of descent, Sullivan will be at ground level in 68 minutes. And then the second crisis hits. The fire in Sullivan's left wing intensifies. Flames stream backward from the torn wing root, bright orange against the pale afternoon sky. The aluminum skin bubbles and blackens. Inside the wing, fuel from ruptured tanks feeds the inferno. P-51 Mustangs carry 84 gallons of fuel in each wing tank. Sullivan has no way to know how much fuel is burning versus how much is spraying into the slipstream, but every second his fighter loses weight and balance. The aircraft pulls hard left. Sullivan shoves the control stick right, stomps the right rudder pedal, and manages to level the wings. But it takes constant pressure. His left arm, shredded by shrapnel, screams with pain every time he adjusts the stick. Blood drips onto his lap, darkening his olive-drab flight suit. The technical problem is clear and brutal. Without hydraulic pressure, Sullivan has no landing gear control, no flap control, no dive brake control. The Mustang's landing gear is designed to extend under hydraulic pressure or, in emergency, by gravity and airflow if the pilot pulls the manual release. But the manual release mechanism runs through the left wing root, exactly where the 20mm shell detonated. The cables are almost certainly severed, more immediately threatening the engine. Oil temperature continues climbing. 145 degrees Celsius, 152, 159. The Merlin engine's tolerances are precise. Above 165 degrees, internal components begin to warp. Piston rings lose their seal. Bearings seize. At 180 degrees, catastrophic failure becomes inevitable. Pistons welding themselves to cylinder walls, connecting rods snapping, the crankshaft shattering. Sullivan's current oil, temperature, 161 degrees and rising. He cannot bail out, not yet. 3 German fighters are closing from his 7 o'clock position, directly behind and slightly below. If he opens his canopy and attempts to exit the aircraft, he'll be a sitting target, floating under his parachute, while FW-190s make leisurely gun runs. Luftwaffe pilots in early 1945 are desperate, low on fuel, and facing execution if they return from missions without kills. They will shoot him in his parachute without hesitation. Sullivan glances at his rearview mirror, a small convex reflector mounted above the canopy. The 3 German fighters are at 800 yards and closing. Their cowl-mounted 20mm cannons can kill at 1,000 yards. He has perhaps 40 seconds before they open fire. The logical choice is to dive. Use gravity and his Mustang's superior dive speed to outrun the German fighters. But diving will accelerate his oil temperature crisis. It will also take him lower, into denser air where his burning wing will create more drag, making it harder to maintain airspeed. And it will put him closer to the ground, reducing his options if the engine finally quits. Sullivan makes his decision. He's going to fight. He rolls Irish Dancer hard right, pulling the nose up 15 degrees. The maneuver costs him 60 miles per hour of airspeed, dropping from 310 to 250. But it points his gun sight at the closing German fighters. The Mustang shudders. The flames from his wing twist and dance in the disturbed airflow. The lead German fighter, nose number 7 painted in white, opens fire at 600 yards. Tracers arc past Sullivan's canopy, missing by 20 feet. Sullivan waits. His gun sight tracks the FW-190 as it grows in his windscreen. At 400 yards, the German fighter fills the illuminated reticle of his K-14 sight. Sullivan fires. All 6 50 caliber machine guns hammer. The recoil shakes his damaged aircraft. Spent shell casings, each one 3 inches long, eject from the wing gun ports and tumble away in the slipstream. His tracer rounds converge on the FW-190's engine cowling. Strikes flash across the radial engine. Oil streams backward in black ribbons. The German fighter shudders, noses down, and breaks away trailing smoke. Not a confirmed kill, but out of the fight. Sullivan's ammunition counter shows 1,240 rounds remaining. 2 German fighters still closing. His altimeter reads 25,800 feet. He's been in crisis for 4 minutes. The engine temperature gauge now reads 166 degrees. The needle quivers as it climbs toward the red line. If you want to see how James Sullivan manages to shoot down 3 enemy fighters while his own aircraft burns around him, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Sullivan. The second German fighter, this one with a green spiral painted on its spinner, attacks from Sullivan's left side, trying to exploit his damaged wing. Smart tactics, but Sullivan anticipates the move. He rolls left into the attack, a counterintuitive maneuver that presents his aircraft's smallest profile. The German pilot adjusts, firing a burst from 500 yards. Most of the shells miss, but one 20mm round tears through Sullivan's right horizontal stabilizer, punching a hole the size of a dinner plate through the thin aluminum. The Mustang's tail shudders. The control stick vibrates in Sullivan's hands, but the stabilizer holds. Sullivan rolls level, centers his gun sight, and fires a 3-second burst. 45 rounds from each gun, 270 bullets total, converge on the FW-190 at 350 yards. The concentration of fire is devastating. 50 caliber rounds punch through the German fighter's canopy, cockpit, and fuselage. The FW-190 snaps, inverted, and enters a vertical dive, trailing pieces of wreckage. Sullivan watches it fall for 3 seconds, confirming the kill, then refocuses. 1 German fighter remains. This pilot is more cautious. He stays at 800 yards, circling Sullivan's burning Mustang like a wolf testing wounded prey. Sullivan's situation is deteriorating by the second. Oil temperature 171 degrees. The engine is running rough now, missing on at least 2 of its 12 cylinders. Power output has dropped from 1,695 horsepower to perhaps 1,200. The fire in his left wing has burned through to the aileron control cables. When Sullivan moves the stick left, there's a 2-second delay before the wing responds. Altitude 20,600 feet and falling at 520 feet per minute. Fuel gauge showing 84 gallons remaining in his fuselage tank, unknown amounts in the wing tanks, if they haven't already burned empty. The German pilot makes his move at 2:24 p.m., 7 minutes after the initial attack. He dives from 26,000 feet building speed, then pulls up behind Sullivan's tail, positioning for a classic deflection shot. It's an expert maneuver. Sullivan sees it developing in his rearview mirror, but he's too slow to counter. His damaged aircraft won't respond fast enough. The FW-190 opens fire at 450 yards. Cannon shells and machine gun tracers converge on Irish Dancer's fuselage. 3 rounds miss. 2 strike the tail section. 1 tears through the rear fuselage, 4 feet behind Sullivan's seat. Sullivan doesn't try to evade. Instead, he cuts his throttle completely, chopping power to idle. The Mustang decelerates violently, from 240 miles per hour to 180 in 4 seconds. The German pilot, expecting Sullivan to maintain speed, overshoots. The FW-190 flashes past Sullivan's right wing, now only 200 feet away, moving 120 miles per hour faster than Sullivan's dying Mustang. Sullivan slams his throttle forward. The tortured engine responds, barely. He pulls the stick back and right, rolling onto the German fighter's tail. His gun sight tracks the FW-190 as it tries to dive away. Sullivan fires his third and final burst. Range, 280 yards. Deflection angle, 15 degrees. His bullets arc through the sky in a precise curve, intersecting the German fighter's flight path. 23 .50 caliber rounds hit the FW-190's left wing root and fuselage. The wing separates at the spar. The German fighter tumbles sideways, out of control, shedding pieces. Sullivan watches it spiral toward the earth, trailing flame. 3 German fighters shot down. His ammunition counter reads 90 rounds remaining. The immediate threat is gone. Sullivan is alone in the sky at 20,400 feet, with a fighter that's more fire than aircraft. 2:27 p.m. Sullivan's engine temperature hits 178 degrees. The Merlin 1650 is eating itself from the inside. He can hear it, metal grinding against metal, bearings howling, the smooth roar degraded into a tortured scream. Black smoke pours from the cowling, streaming backward over the canopy, coating the plexiglass with oil residue. He levels the Mustang at 23,000 feet and points the nose northwest, toward Belgium. Distance to friendly territory, 124 miles. At his current ground speed of 195 miles per hour, that's 38 minutes of flying time. His engine won't last 38 minutes. It might not last 38 seconds. Sullivan's left arm has gone numb from blood loss. Shrapnel wounds in his shoulder and bicep leak steadily. His flight suit is soaked from collar to waist. The cockpit smells like copper and smoke. Every breath through his oxygen mask tastes like oil and burning rubber. The fire in his left wing has spread. Flames now stream from both the wing root and from new cracks in the wing's upper surface, where the metal skin has peeled back from heat stress. The entire wing glows dull red in places. The aileron, the hinged control surface that makes the aircraft roll, has burned partially away. When Sullivan tries to level the wings, the left aileron responds sluggishly, then not at all. He's flying a fighter with only one functioning wing. The immediate problem, keeping the aircraft flying straight, requires constant pressure on the control stick and rudder. The Mustang wants to roll left and enter a spin. Sullivan fights it with brute force, shoving the stick right, stomping the right rudder pedal until his leg cramps. Every second is a wrestling match against physics and fire. His altimeter continues unwinding, 20,400, 21,800, 21,200 feet. He's losing altitude at 600 feet per minute now. The mathematics are brutal. At this rate, he'll be at ground level in 35 minutes. The Belgian border is 38 minutes away. Sullivan will not make it. At 2:31 p.m., the engine quits. Not catastrophically, no explosion or seizing. It simply stops producing power. The propeller continues windmilling, spun by airflow, but the cylinders fire irregularly, then not at all. Oil pressure drops to 0. The cockpit goes suddenly, eerily quiet. Without the engine's roar, Sullivan can hear the wind, shrieking past his damaged canopy, the crackle of fire in his wing, the groan of stressed metal. Irish Dancer becomes a 12,000-pound glider with the aerodynamic efficiency of a burning brick. Altitude, 20,600 feet. The Mustang's glide ratio, The distance it can travel forward for every foot of altitude lost is approximately 15.1 under ideal conditions. Sullivan's conditions are not ideal. His damaged wing creates massive drag. The fire adds turbulence. His glide ratio is perhaps 8:1 if he's lucky. 20,000 feet of altitude means he can glide 160,000 feet forward. That's 30 miles. The Belgian border is 108 miles away. Sullivan has three options. First, bail out immediately, parachute into Germany, and hope he's captured by regular Wehrmacht troops instead of SS units or angry civilians. Second, try to glide to a crash landing in German territory, probably in the Ruhr Valley Industrial Zone, heavily defended and hostile. Third, keep flying northwest, lose altitude gradually, and hope for a miracle. He chooses option 3 because First Lieutenant James Sullivan is either extraordinarily brave or extraordinarily stubborn, probably both. At 2:34 p.m., altitude 90,200 feet, Sullivan tries to extend his landing gear. He pulls the manual release handle, a red T-grip on the left side of the cockpit. Nothing happens. The hydraulic system is dead. The cables are severed. The landing gear remains retracted and locked in the wheel wells. He will be landing gear up, on his belly, at whatever speed he has when he reaches the ground. The wind shifts at 18,400 feet. A gust catches Sullivan's burning wing, and the Mustang drops suddenly, sickeningly, losing 300 feet in 4 seconds. Sullivan's stomach lurches. The aircraft wallows, teetering on the edge of a stall. He pushes the stick forward, trading altitude for airspeed, and the Mustang stabilizes at 165 miles per hour. Fuel gauge, 62 gallons. Not that it matters. The engine is dead. But fuel means fire risk. The fuselage tank sits directly behind the engine firewall, 18 inches in front of Sullivan's feet. If the fire in his wings spreads backward, if flames reach that fuel tank, the Mustang will explode. Sullivan considers jettisoning the canopy and bailing out. His hand moves to the canopy release. Then he sees it, a gap in the clouds ahead. And through that gap, a river, the Rhine, the border between Germany and occupied Netherlands. If he can reach the Rhine, he's 90 miles from Belgium, instead of 1 or 8. He commits. He'll fly this burning wreck as far as physics and luck allow. At 2:41 p.m., altitude 14,800 feet, the fire in Sullivan's wing burns through the main spar. The structural member that carries the wing's flight loads, the backbone of the entire wing, cracks. The wing bends upward at an unnatural angle, 5 degrees higher than its original position. The Mustang lurches. Sullivan compensates with aileron and rudder, but his control inputs are increasingly ineffective. The aircraft is disintegrating around him. At 12,000 feet, Sullivan crosses the Rhine. German anti-aircraft batteries at Emmerich open fire. Flak bursts bracket his aircraft, black puffs of smoke from 80mm shells detonating at preset altitudes. Shrapnel rattles against Irish Dancer's fuselage. One fragment punches through the cockpit floor, missing Sullivan's right boot by 6 inches. He flies through the flak barrage because he has no choice. The Mustang has no engine, no power, no ability to maneuver. He points the nose northwest and glides. At 9,800 feet, over Dutch territory now, Sullivan unbuckles his radio cord and oxygen hose. He loosens his seat harness. He's preparing to bail out, but he wants to stay with the aircraft as long as possible, milk every mile from his dying fighter. At 6,200 feet, the left wing collapses completely. The main spar fails. The outer panel, everything outboard of the landing gear well, folds upward 90 degrees, then tears away. 14 feet of wing, 800 pounds of structure, fuel, and fire separate from the aircraft. The panel tumbles away, cartwheeling through the air. Irish Dancer snap rolls right. Without the left wing's weight and lift, the aircraft is catastrophically unbalanced. Sullivan is thrown against his harness. His head slams against the canopy frame. Stars burst across his vision. The Mustang enters a flat spin, rotating like a falling leaf. Altitude 5,800 feet, ground 4,200 feet below. Sullivan has perhaps 40 seconds before impact. He jettisons the canopy. The plexiglass panel tears away in the slipstream. Wind hammers into the cockpit at 180 miles per hour. Sullivan releases his harness, stands on his seat, and jumps. Sullivan falls through 5,600 feet of cold March air. The wind tears at his flight suit. His shrapnel-damaged left arm hangs useless. Blood sprays from his wounds, atomizing in the slipstream. He pulls his ripcord with his right hand. The parachute deploys, a 24-foot diameter canopy of white silk that snaps open with bone-jarring force. The sudden deceleration feels like hitting a wall. Sullivan's descent slows from 120 miles per hour to 18. He swings beneath the parachute like a pendulum. Above him, Irish Dancer continues its flat spin, now beyond 200 feet lower. He watches his fighter impact a plowed field 3 miles northeast of Nijmegen, Netherlands. The Mustang hits nose first at 240 miles per hour. The fuselage crumples. The remaining wing shears off. The fuselage tank explodes, throwing fire 400 feet in every direction. Sullivan descends through 3,000 feet, 2,000, 1,000. The ground rushes up, a patchwork of fields, canals, and farmhouses. He steers the parachute toward an open pasture, pulling on the risers to slip sideways. At 200 feet, he sees people running from a nearby barn. Civilians. He can't tell if they're friendly Dutch or German occupiers. He hits the ground at 2:48 p.m., 31 minutes after the initial attack. His landing is hard. His legs buckle. He rolls onto his injured left shoulder and screams. The pain is white-hot, obliterating. He lies in the mud for 10 seconds, gasping, while his parachute collapses around him. Hands grab him. Multiple people. They're shouting in Dutch. Sullivan doesn't understand the words, but the tone is urgent, not hostile, friendly. They're Dutch resistance fighters who watched his aircraft burn across the sky. A woman, perhaps 30 years old, wearing a gray wool coat, kneels beside him. She speaks English with a thick accent. "American? You are American pilot?" Sullivan nods. "Lieutenant, 8th Air Force." "You are bleeding very much. We take you. Germans come soon. They see your airplane." 3 men lift Sullivan. Every movement sends agony through his left arm. They half carry, half drag him across the muddy field toward a barn. Behind them, black smoke rises from Irish Dancer's crash site. Already, Sullivan can hear engines, German military vehicles responding to the crash. The resistance fighters hide Sullivan in the barn's hayloft. They pack his wounds with cloth torn from their own shirts. The woman, her name is Katrian, gives him water and a piece of dark bread. Sullivan's hands shake so badly he drops the bread twice. They stay hidden for 4 hours. German soldiers search the barn at 5:15 p.m., but they're looking for an American pilot on the run, not one hidden in plain sight 6 feet above their heads. The Germans leave. Katrian and her group wait until full darkness at 8:40 p.m., then move Sullivan to a safe house in Nijmegen. For the next 3 weeks, Sullivan has passed through the Dutch underground network. He moves from safe house to safe house, never staying more than 2 nights in one location. His wounds become infected. Fever spikes to 103 degrees. Catrion, who stays with him throughout, cleans his wounds with boiled water and precious black market sulfa powder. She probably saves his life. On April 16, 1945, 23 days after he bailed out, Sullivan is evacuated by Canadian forces advancing through Holland. He's transported to a field hospital near Nijmegen, then to a British hospital in Brussels. Doctors remove 37 pieces of shrapnel from his left arm and shoulder. He spends 6 weeks in the hospital. Sullivan's wingman, 2nd Lieutenant Robert Garrison, survived the March 24th mission. He confirms Sullivan's 3 kills. The Luftwaffe fighters shot down while Irish Dancer burned. The gun camera film from Garrison's aircraft shows Sullivan's final attack. The German fighter breaking apart, Sullivan's damaged Mustang trailing flames. The 3 Luftwaffe pilots Sullivan shot down were identified through German records captured after the war. Lieutenant Franz Richter, aged 22, killed when his FW-190 crashed near Duisburg. Feldwebel Klaus Menzel, aged 27, killed when his aircraft disintegrated at 24,000 feet. Unteroffizier Hans Wagner, aged 19, killed when his aircraft spiraled into the Ruhr Valley. Sullivan is awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross on May 22, 1945, at a ceremony in Brussels. The citation reads, "For extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight." First Lieutenant Sullivan, though grievously wounded and flying a burning aircraft, engaged superior enemy forces and destroyed 3 enemy fighters before abandoning his aircraft over friendly territory. Sullivan returns to the United States on June 12, 1945, aboard a transport ship from Southampton to New York. He's promoted to captain and offered a position as a flight instructor at Randolph Field in Texas. He declines. His left arm, shredded by shrapnel, never fully recovers. He can't grip a control stick with both hands anymore. He moves back to his hometown of Scranton, Pennsylvania. He marries his high school girlfriend, Margaret Donnelly, in September 1945. They have 3 children. Sullivan works for the Scranton Railway Company for 32 years, eventually becoming a depot supervisor. He rarely talks about the war. Catrion, the Dutch resistance fighter who saved his life, corresponds with Sullivan for 40 years. They exchange letters twice a year, at Christmas and on March 24th, the anniversary of the mission. Sullivan visits her in Nijmegen in 1967, bringing his entire family. They remain friends until her death in 1985. Sullivan's wingman, Robert Garrison, becomes a commercial airline pilot after the war. He flies for United Airlines for 28 years, logging 22,000 flight hours. He and Sullivan attend fighter pilot reunions together every year from 1948 until 1994. The wreckage of Irish Dancer remains in that Dutch field for 3 years. The Dutch government excavates it in 1948, recovering Sullivan's aircraft serial number, 44173-458, his gun camera, and 600 pounds of melted aluminum. The propeller, bent but intact, is donated to the 8th Air Force Museum in Savannah, Georgia, where it remains on display. Sullivan reaches the rank of Major in the Air Force Reserve, retiring from active duty in 1965. He lives quietly in Scranton, attending church, coaching Little League baseball, and growing tomatoes in his backyard garden. When pressed about his Distinguished Flying Cross, he deflects. "I just stayed in the airplane longer than I should have," he says. James Sullivan dies on November 8, 1994, age 73, in Scranton Regional Medical Center. Heart failure. His funeral at St. Peter's Cathedral draws 400 people. Representatives from the Dutch government attend. A Netherlands flag drapes his casket alongside the American flag. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about pilots who should have died, but chose to fight instead. About resistance fighters who risked everything for strangers. About ordinary men and women who became extraordinary in moments of crisis. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure First Lieutenant James Sullivan and the burning Mustang named Irish Dancer don't disappear into silence.